The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, though time meant little when it came from a star system 300 light-years away. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the communication center of Earth's Orbital Station 7, watching the holographic display flicker with alien symbols. The translation software worked through the text, converting the harsh angular script of the Crovath language into something humans could understand. It was not a request. It was a demand. The Crovath Empire requires the presence of Earth's representative. You will come to our homeworld. You will come alone. You will hear our terms. The room felt colder after the message finished playing. Commander Peterson, the station's military liaison, crossed his arms and shook his head. He was a broad man with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too many battles. "This is a trap, Ambassador. Everyone can see it." Elena did not respond immediately. She read the message again, studying each word choice, each subtle implication. The Crovath had been part of the galactic community for over 3,000 years. They were warriors, conquerors, and survivors. Humanity had only made first contact 50 years ago, and in galactic terms, they were children stumbling into a room full of predators. "They want us to refuse," Elena said quietly. Her voice carried the trace of an accent from her childhood in Argentina, though she had spent most of her adult life in space. "If we refuse, they have their excuse for war. And if you go, they'll kill you and still have their war," Peterson replied. He moved closer to the holographic display, as if proximity might reveal some hidden detail. "The Crovath don't do diplomacy. They do dominance. Their entire culture is built on strength and combat." Elena smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Every culture is built on something?" "The question is finding the cracks in the foundation." She had been a diplomat for 15 years, but before that, she had been an anthropologist. And before that, during the resource wars on Earth, she had been a battlefield surgeon. She understood violence, but she also understood that violence was just one language among many. The trick was knowing when to speak and when to listen. 3 days later, Elena's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Crovath system. The planet below was called Crovathar in their language, which translated roughly to blood and victory. The world was beautiful in a terrible way, with swirling red clouds and dark oceans that looked like pools of oil. 2 moons hung in the sky like watching eyes. The Crovath escort ships surrounded her vessel immediately. They were angular and aggressive, covered in spikes and weapon ports. Elena's pilot, a young woman named Sarah Chen, gripped the controls with white knuckles. "They're targeting us, Ambassador." "Of course they are," Elena said calmly. She was watching the planet's surface through the viewport, trying to absorb every detail. Cities sprawled across the continents in geometric patterns, and massive structures rose toward the sky like monuments to war. "Let them guide us down." No resistance. The landing was rough. The Crovath preferred intimidation over comfort. When the airlock opened, Elena stepped out alone into the crimson afternoon light. The air was hot and dry, tasting of iron and dust. A delegation of Crovath warriors waited for her. They were enormous. The shortest stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in chitinous armor that seemed to be part of their biology rather than clothing. Their faces were angular and insectoid, with multiple eyes that gleamed like black pearls. Each warrior carried weapons that looked ancient and well-used. The lead warrior stepped forward. His armor was decorated with engravings, and a cape of dark fabric hung from his shoulders. "I am Commander Vexerel. You will follow." Elena bowed her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than submission. She had studied their customs obsessively during the journey. "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth. I am honored to walk your world." Something flickered in Vexerel's eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Humans rarely showed respect to the Crovath, usually responding with either fear or false bravado. Elena offered neither. They walked through the city in silence. The streets were wide and filled with Crovath citizens going about their business. Markets sold food and weapons side by side. Children, smaller versions of the adults, played games that looked suspiciously like combat training. Everyone stopped to watch Elena pass. She felt the weight of thousands of eyes on her back. The war cathedral rose before them like a mountain. It was not a religious structure, Elena knew, but rather the center of all state business. The Crovath conducted their politics the way they conducted everything else, in an arena, in front of witnesses, with the constant threat of violence underlying every word. Inside, the cathedral was vast. Tiered seating rose on all sides, and in the center was an open space the size of a football field. At the far end, elevated on a platform of dark stone, sat a throne made entirely of weapons. Swords, axes, energy rifles, and devices Elena could not identify were all welded together into a seat of power. King Thrazakor sat upon that throne. He was larger than the other Crovath, his chitinous armor a deep red color that matched the sky outside. Multiple scars crossed his visible body. Marks of battles survived. His eyes fixed on Elena the moment she entered, and she felt the intelligence behind them. This was not a simple brute. This was a predator who thought before he struck. The king's voice boomed across the cathedral. The human comes. How small she is, how fragile. Laughter rippled through the assembled crowd. Elena counted at least 3,000 Crovath warriors in attendance, packing the seating areas. This was not a private negotiation. This was a show. Elena walked forward until she stood in the center of the arena floor. She did not bow. She did not show fear. She simply stood and waited, her eyes never leaving the king. "I am Elena Vasquez," she said, her voice amplified by the cathedral's acoustics. "I speak for humanity." Humanity, Thrazakor repeated, drawing out the word like an insult. A species of diplomats and merchants. Weak things hiding behind words and trade agreements. You have no honor. You have no strength. You are prey pretending to be predators. Elena let the insult wash over her. She was watching the crowd, reading their reactions. Most showed approval and bloodlust. But not all. She noticed a group of older warriors in the front section, their armor covered in more engravings than the others. Their faces showed something different. Unease, perhaps, or disapproval. One warrior in particular caught her attention. He sat close to the throne, his armor marked with the symbols of high rank. His eyes moved between Elena and the king with an expression she could not quite read. Calculation, judgment. This warrior was important. "Your Majesty," Elena said, choosing her words carefully. "I have come as requested." "What are your terms?" Thrazakor leaned forward on his throne of weapons. A smile crossed his alien face, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Terms? There is only one term. Humanity will submit to Crovath authority. Your worlds will pay tribute. Your ships will serve our fleets. Your people will acknowledge us as your superiors." The crowd roared its approval. Elena waited for the noise to die down before responding. "And if we refuse?" The king's smile widened. "Then you will face traditional challenge. Single combat. You against me. If you win, humanity goes free. If you lose, humanity submits." There it was. The trap laid bare. Accept and die. Refuse and give them their excuse for war. Either way, the Crovath got what they wanted. But Elena was still watching that high-ranking warrior near the throne. As Thrazakor made his declaration, the warrior's expression had shifted. Just for a moment, she saw something flash across his face. Disgust. That was interesting. That was very interesting indeed. Elena stood in the center of the war cathedral while thousands of alien warriors watched her in silence. The weight of their attention pressed down like a physical force. King Thrazakor waited on his throne, still smiling that terrible smile, confident in his trap. She needed time to think. Time to observe. Time to understand what was really happening here. "Traditional challenge," Elena said slowly, letting her voice carry across the massive space. "I am unfamiliar with all aspects of Crovath tradition. As a guest on your world, I would not want to dishonor your customs through ignorance." It was a careful statement, not a refusal, not an acceptance. Just a request for information. Thrazakor's smile faltered slightly. He had expected fear or defiance, not curiosity. "You dare to question Crovath tradition?" "I dare to respect it," Elena replied. "Respect requires understanding. Would your Majesty explain the rules of traditional challenge so that I may face it properly?" The high-ranking warrior Elena had noticed earlier shifted in his seat. His eyes narrowed as he studied her. She caught his gaze for just a moment and saw recognition there. He understood what she was doing. She was buying time and gathering information. Thrazakor waved a clawed hand dismissively. "The rules are simple. 2 warriors enter the arena. 1 warrior leaves alive. Combat continues until death. There are no weapons restrictions, no time limits, no interventions. Victory proves strength. Strength proves right. This is the foundation of Crovath civilization for 3,000 years. A noble tradition," Elena said. She began walking slowly around the arena floor, appearing to examine it while actually studying the crowd. And this tradition has been used to settle all disputes? All important disputes, Thrazgor confirmed. Challenges between rivals. Challenges for position. Challenges for the throne itself. Ah, Elena said. So your majesty also gained the throne through traditional challenge? The temperature in the cathedral seemed to drop. Several warriors shifted uncomfortably. The high-ranking warrior's face became very still, like a mask. Thrazgor's voice turned cold. My predecessor, King Drasmor, died of natural causes. Heart failure during peace negotiations with the Yartek species. A tragic loss for our people. Elena nodded slowly. Of course. Forgive my ignorance of recent history. She paused, then added, though I had read that King Drasmor was young for a Crovath, only 400 cycles old, and in excellent health. Even the strong can fall unexpectedly, Thrazgor said. His claws gripped the armrests of his throne. But we waste time with history. You will answer my challenge or prove humanity's cowardice before the galaxy. Elena stopped walking and faced the throne directly. I notice, Your Majesty, that you hold a cup. Is that part of the ceremony? For the first time, Thrazgor looked uncertain. He glanced down at the ornate vessel in his hand, a beautiful piece of metalwork covered in royal seals. This is the chalice of victory. The king drinks from it during all state functions. Another tradition you question? Not question. Observe, Elena said. She was watching how he held the cup, how his fingers curled around it protectively. It is beautiful. May I see it more closely? No. The word came out too fast, too sharp. Thrazgor realized his mistake and tried to cover it. It is sacred. Only the king may touch it. Elena filed that information away. The king was protective of his cup. Unusually protective. The high-ranking warrior stood. His movement drew every eye in the cathedral. Your Majesty, if I may speak. Thrazgor's eyes flashed with anger, but he could not refuse in front of the entire court. General Krelzoth, you have something to add? So the warrior was a general. That made sense. Elena watched him carefully as he descended from his seat and approached the arena floor. General Krelzoth was old for a Crovath, his armor scored with the marks of countless battles. When he spoke, his voice carried authority. The human shows interest in our traditions. This is unusual. Most aliens mock our ways or fear them. Perhaps we should honor her curiosity with proper explanation. She delays, Thrazgor snapped. She fears combat. Perhaps, Krelzoth said. Or perhaps she simply wishes to die with understanding rather than ignorance. Is that not also a form of courage? The crowd murmured. Krelzoth had just defended a human, something no one had expected. Elena saw her opening. General Krelzoth is wise, she said. I do not fear death. I have walked through battlefields and held the dying in my hands. But I'm a student of cultures, and the Crovath culture is ancient and complex. Before I accept this challenge, I would understand one thing. What thing? Thrazgor demanded. Elena turned to address the entire crowd, not just the king. Why does King Thrazgor demand submission from humanity now? Our species has been part of the galactic community for 50 years. We have not threatened Crovath territory. We have not insulted Crovath honor. We have barely interacted with your empire at all. So why this challenge? Why this moment? The question hung in the air. It was a good question, and everyone in the cathedral knew it. Thrazgor stood from his throne. Because humanity grows too bold. You expand too quickly. You make alliances with too many species. You must be reminded of your place before you become a problem. So this is preventive, Elena said, not responsive. You attack not because we have wronged you, but because you fear we might someday be strong enough to resist you. We fear nothing, Thrazgor roared. Then why not wait? Elena pressed. If we are so weak, so fragile, why not let us grow and then crush us when we actually pose a threat? Why waste resources on a species of merchants and diplomats? General Krelzoth was watching the exchange with intense focus. Elena saw understanding dawn in his eyes. He knew what she was doing. She was making Thrazgor explain himself, forcing him to justify his actions before his own people, and the justifications were weak. I need explain nothing to pray, Thrazgor said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. You will accept the challenge, or I will accept, Elena interrupted. But first I request human custom, a moment of meditation before combat, and the right to examine the ritual weapons so I may choose properly. Thrazgor laughed, relief evident in his voice. She had accepted. The trap had closed. Granted. You may have 1 hour. The combat will take place at sunset, when the sky turns the color of blood. General Krelzoth approached Elena as the crowd began to disperse for the waiting period. He spoke quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. You are cleverer than you appear, human. All humans are cleverer than we appear, Elena replied softly. That is our advantage. What can you tell me about King Thrazakor? Krelzoth glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Why would I help you? Because you said, if I may speak, when you addressed him. Senior generals do not ask permission from their kings in Krovath culture. They advise. They counsel. But you asked permission, which means he has made you afraid, which means he is not the king you wanted. The general's eyes widened slightly. This human saw too much. King Drasmor was a great warrior and a wise leader. His death was unexpected. Suspicious, Elena said. That is a dangerous word. Truth is often dangerous. Tell me, General, if someone had poisoned King Drasmor, how would they have done it? Krovath biology is different from human. What poisons work on your species? Krelzoth was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. There is a compound from the northern wastes. It grows in volcanic soil. In small doses, it enhances strength and stamina. In large doses, it causes heart failure. And continued use becomes an addiction. The user needs more and more to function normally. Elena's mind raced. And this compound. What color is it? In liquid form? Dark blue, almost black. She thought of the chalice of victory, its ornate design hiding the color of its contents. She thought of how protectively Thrazakor held it, how he had refused to let her see it closely. General Krelzoth, Elena said quietly, I believe I know how to win this challenge without fighting at all. But I will need your help. The old warrior studied her face. You ask me to betray my king. I ask you to help your people. There is a difference. Krelzoth was quiet for a very long time. The binary suns of the Krovath system began their descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. In the distance, drums began to beat, summoning the crowd back to the cathedral for the execution they all expected to witness. Finally, the general spoke. What do you need? The hour of meditation passed too quickly. Elena spent it not in quiet contemplation, but in careful observation and planning. General Krelzoth had given her access to the weapon preparation chamber, a room beneath the war cathedral where ritual combat equipment was maintained. The walls were lined with blades, hammers, energy weapons, and devices whose purposes Elena could only guess at. An old Krovath named Sevrak watched over the weapons. He had been the keeper for 300 years, he told her, his voice creaking like old leather. His armor was plain and undecorated, marking him as a servant rather than a warrior. But his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. You will die today, Sevrak said matter-of-factly as Elena examined a massive war hammer. King Thrazakor has killed 17 challengers since taking the throne. He is fast and brutal. You are small and soft. Probably, Elena agreed. She set down the hammer and moved to a rack of bladed weapons. Tell me, Sevrak, were you the keeper when King Drasmor ruled? The old Krovath's expression shifted. I was. For 200 years before his death. What kind of king was he? Sevrak was quiet for a moment, his clawed hands resting on a polishing cloth. He was the kind of king who remembered the names of servants, who understood that strength without wisdom is just violence, who believed the Krovath could be more than conquerors. You miss him. The whole empire misses him, whether they admit it or not. Thrazakor rules through fear. Drasmor ruled through respect. There is a difference. Elena picked up a long curved blade. It was beautiful, its edge sharp enough to catch the light. This weapon, what is its history? That is Korveth, the Mercy Blade. It was wielded by Queen Talaresh 400 years ago. She was a philosopher warrior who believed combat should be swift and honorable. The blade is designed to kill quickly without suffering. May I carry this into the arena? Sevrak's eyes widened. You may carry any weapon here, but why choose one designed for mercy? You will need every advantage to survive even moments against the king. Elena turned the blade over in her hands, feeling its balance. Because I do not intend to use it for combat. The old keeper stared at her. Then you truly will die. Perhaps. Or perhaps there are ways to win without fighting. Tell me something else, Sevrak. You have been in the cathedral for centuries. You see everything. What do you know about the chalice of victory? Sevrak's face went very still. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he moved to a corner of the room and retrieved an old scroll. He unrolled it carefully, revealing ancient Crovath script and illustrations. "This is the history of royal traditions," he said quietly. "See here? The Chalice of Victory was created 2,000 years ago. It was meant to be shared during state functions. The king would drink first, then pass it to his advisors, then to gathered warriors. It symbolized that the king's strength came from his people. Shared," Elena repeated. "Not kept private. Not until Thrazkor." Sevrok's voice was barely a whisper. "He drinks alone. He claims the chalice is too sacred for others to touch. But that is not tradition. That is innovation." Elena felt the pieces falling into place in her mind. And when did Thrazkor start this private drinking? Shortly after King Drasmor's death. Perhaps one cycle later, which meant approximately 5 years by Earth's calendar. 5 years of slow addiction growing worse. 5 years of needing the compound to function. She wondered how much he was consuming now. How dependent he had become. The drums grew louder. Sunset was approaching. Elena thanked Sevrok and made her way back to the main cathedral floor, the mercy blade in her hand. The crowd had returned, larger than before. Word had spread throughout the city that a human would fight King Thrazkor. Thousands packed the seating areas, with more watching from balconies and doorways. Elena spotted General Krelzoth in his position near the throne. He met her eyes and gave the smallest nod. Thrazkor descended from his throne as Elena entered the arena. He had removed his ceremonial robes and now wore only battle armor, and carried a massive blade that crackled with blue energy. The weapon was as long as Elena was tall. The king's eyes were bright, almost feverish. His movements were quick and sharp. The compound in his chalice was working through his system, enhancing his already formidable strength. A Crovath official stepped forward to announce the combat. By tradition and law, King Thrazkor challenges the human ambassador Elena Vasquez. Victory proves strength. Strength proves right. Combat begins at the sound of the war horn and ends with death. Are both parties prepared? "I am prepared," Thrazkor said, his voice echoing across the cathedral. Elena raised the mercy blade. "I have a question first. By Crovath tradition, is the challenger permitted to speak during combat?" The official looked confused. "Speaking is not forbidden, though it is unusual. Most prefer to save their breath for fighting." "Then I will speak," Elena said. "And I will ask King Thrazkor to answer if he dares." Thrazkor laughed. "Ask your questions, human. I will answer while I kill you." The war horn sounded, a deep note that shook the air. The combat had officially begun. Elena did not attack. She did not even raise her blade into a fighting stance. Instead, she stood calmly and began to speak. King Thrazkor took the throne 5 years ago, after King Drasmor died suddenly during peace negotiations. A healthy king, only 400 cycles old, dying of heart failure. How tragic. How convenient. Thrazkor's expression darkened. I dare to observe," Elena interrupted. "I dare to question. I dare to notice patterns. For example, I notice that King Thrazkor drinks constantly from his private chalice. I notice that he drinks alone, breaking ancient tradition. I notice that he becomes agitated when questioned about it." The crowd was completely silent. This was not the combat they had expected. Elena began walking slowly around the arena, addressing different sections of the audience. "I am an anthropologist by training," she continued. "I study cultures, and the Crovath culture is fascinating because it is built on honor, on tradition, on the belief that strength and right are connected. But what happens when someone corrupts those traditions? What happens when someone uses poison instead of combat, fear instead of respect, lies instead of honor?" Thrazkor charged. His blade swept through the air where Elena had been standing, but she had already moved. She was faster than she looked, and she had spent her meditation hour memorizing the arena's layout, planning angles of escape. "You slander your king," Thrazkor roared. "I speak truth," Elena replied. She was breathing hard now, the exertion of dodging beginning to show. "There is a compound from the northern wastes. In small doses, it enhances strength. In large doses, it causes heart failure. In continued use, it creates addiction. And it turns liquid dark blue, almost black." General Krelzoth stood slowly. Other warriors began murmuring. Everyone could see where this was going. Thrazkor attacked again, this time with greater fury. His blade carved through the air in devastating arcs. Elena ducked and rolled, her smaller size giving her advantages in agility if not strength. The mercy blade remained in her hand unused. "Show them the chalice," Elena called out, her voice carrying across the cathedral. "Share your drink with the court as tradition demands. Prove that you have nothing to hide. I will prove nothing to pray." Thrazakor struck downward with his blade, and Elena barely twisted aside. The energy weapon hit the stone floor and carved a smoking gouge. "Because you cannot," Elena said. She was beginning to tire now, her escapes becoming narrower, but she had to keep talking, keep pushing. "Because that chalice contains your poison and your addiction. Because you murdered King Drasmor with the same compound you now cannot live without. Because you are not a warrior, you are a poisoner wearing a warrior's armor." The crowd erupted. Some shouted denial, some shouted questions. Warriors began arguing among themselves. The official combat had become something else entirely. A trial conducted in front of thousands of witnesses. General Krelzoth's voice cut through the chaos. "Your Majesty, the human makes serious accusations. Tradition demands you answer them. Share the chalice, as our ancestors did. Prove your honor before the people." Thrazakor turned toward Krelzoth, his eyes wild. "You side with prey against your king?" "I side with truth against lies," the general replied. "I side with honor against corruption. I side with tradition against innovation that serves only one Krovoth's ambition." Elena saw her moment. While Thrazakor was distracted, she moved, not toward him, but toward the throne platform, toward the ornate chalice that sat on its pedestal, gleaming in the red light of the setting suns. Guards moved to intercept her, but hesitated. The combat was still officially in progress, and she was still an active combatant. Interfering with ritual combat was forbidden. Elena reached the chalice and lifted it carefully. The metal was warm, the contents sloshing slightly. She held it up so everyone could see. "Let the truth be witnessed," she said, and then she did something that changed everything. She walked directly toward General Krelzoth and offered him the chalice. The general understood immediately. If he took it, if the liquid touched his skin, the truth would be revealed. Time seemed to slow. Elena stood in the arena holding the chalice of victory, offering it to General Krelzoth. The old warrior looked at the cup, then at the king, then back at Elena. In his eyes she saw the moment of decision, the moment when honor outweighed fear. He reached out and took the chalice. King Thrazakor screamed, a sound of pure rage that echoed off the cathedral walls. He charged toward them, his energy blade raised high. But he was too far away, and the truth was already revealing itself. Krelzoth tilted the chalice, letting some of the liquid spill onto his hands. The dark blue substance, almost black in the fading light, splashed across his armor and skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his skin began to change. Where the liquid had touched, his chitinous armor started to discolor, turning a sickly gray-green. The compound was reacting to contact with Krovoth biology in concentrated form. Several other warriors who stood nearby had droplets splash on them as well, and their skin showed the same reaction. The crowd gasped. The evidence was undeniable, visible to thousands of witnesses. This was not ceremonial drink. This was poison. General Krelzoth lifted his eyes to meet Thrazakor's gaze. When he spoke, his voice was cold as winter on a dead world. "King Drasmor showed me this same discoloration on his skin before he died. I thought it was a symptom of his heart failure. But it was not. It was the mark of poison. Your poison." Thrazakor stopped his charge. For the first time since Elena had arrived on this world, she saw genuine fear cross the king's face. He looked around at the crowd, seeing their expressions shift from bloodlust to horror to rage. "This proves nothing," Thrazakor said, but his voice had lost its certainty. The human could have contaminated the chalice. This could be a trick. Elena set down the mercy blade. She had no more need of it. "I have been in your custody since arriving on this world," she said calmly. "I have not been alone. I have been watched constantly. How could I have poisoned your private chalice, which you never let out of your sight?" An older warrior stood in the crowd. His armor marked him as a council member, one of those who advised the throne. "Your Majesty, if I may, I have served in this court for 600 years. I served King Drasmor's grandfather, and I remember the tradition of the shared chalice. My king, I ask you now before your people, share your cup with me. If it contains only ceremonial drink, I will gladly consume it and stand with you against these accusations." Thrazakor's claws clenched. "I need share nothing with traitors." "Traitors?" The council member's voice rose. "I have bled for this empire. I have fought in 50 campaigns. I have lost family to war and time. And you call me traitor for asking you to follow the traditions our ancestors died to preserve? Other voices joined in now. Warriors throughout the cathedral began demanding answers. The careful control Thrazakor had maintained was crumbling. His rule had been built on fear and spectacle, but spectacle could turn against its creator. General Krelzoth stepped forward into the center of the arena. He moved with the weight of authority, of a warrior who had earned his position through 3 centuries of service. King Thrazakor, I invoke the right of challenge. For the crime of murdering King Drasmor through poison, for the crime of corrupting our traditions, for the crime of bringing shame to the Krovath Empire, I challenge you to ritual combat here and now before these witnesses. The war cathedral fell completely silent. The right of challenge was ancient law, older than the current empire. Any warrior could challenge any other, even a king if they believed honor demanded it. And if the challenge was witnessed by the people, it could not be refused. Thrazakor looked around desperately. His guards had not moved to his defense. His council members were watching him with cold eyes. Even the servants had stopped their work to witness this moment. He was alone, exposed, and everyone could see the truth written on his face. The human lies, he tried again. She has twisted your minds with alien tricks. Elena spoke quietly, but her voice carried. I am one human alone on a world of warriors. I carry a blade I never used. I have no power here except observation and truth. If your king is innocent, why does he fear these things? Thrazakor's hand moved to his belt, where a small vial hung on a chain. Elena recognized the gesture instantly. He was reaching for more of the compound, needing it to function, to fight, to survive. The addiction had progressed so far that he could not even face combat without it. General Krelzoth saw it too. You reach for poison even now. Before witnesses. Before your people. You prove the humans' words with your own actions. Something broke in Thrazakor then. Perhaps it was the compound clouding his judgment. Perhaps it was simply the recognition that his throne was already lost. Whatever the reason, he attacked. But he did not attack Krelzoth. He lunged toward Elena, perhaps thinking he could still salvage his rule by completing the original challenge. His energy blade swept toward her in a killing arc, fast and brutal, and powered by chemically enhanced strength. Elena dropped flat to the ground. The blade passed over her head so close she felt the heat of its energy field. And in that moment, while Thrazakor was overextended and off balance, General Krelzoth moved. The old warrior was fast. Faster than someone his age should have been. He covered the distance between them in 3 strides and caught Thrazakor's weapon arm. There was a moment of struggle, both warriors enhanced by centuries of training and biological evolution. Then other warriors joined in. The guards who had stood by the throne, the council members in the audience, even some of the younger fighters in the crowd. They swarmed forward not to help their king but to restrain him. Thrazakor fought like a cornered animal. He broke free twice, his compound-enhanced strength giving him an edge. But there were too many, and they were too determined. Finally, he was forced to his knees in the center of the arena, his weapons stripped away, his armor cracked and bleeding. General Krelzoth stood over him. King Thrazakor, you are accused of murder, corruption, and breaking the sacred traditions of our people. The evidence is witnessed. The challenge is made. By ancient law, judgment falls to the people. What say you? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of voices rose as one, shouting in the Krovath language. Elena did not need translation to understand their verdict. The sound was primal, angry, final, guilty. Thrazakor looked up at Krelzoth. For a moment, the madness cleared from his eyes and something like understanding appeared. You were always too bound by the old ways, General. I wanted to make us stronger. You made us weaker, Krelzoth replied. Strength without honor is just tyranny, and tyranny always falls. The execution was swift. Krovath justice did not waste time on prolonged suffering. General Krelzoth himself delivered the killing blow, as was his right as the challenger. Thrazakor died in the same arena where he had planned to execute a human diplomat, proving that sometimes the trap springs on the one who sets it. Elena watched it all. She did not look away. She had been a battlefield surgeon once, and she understood that death was part of the equation of life. She felt no satisfaction in it. Only a quiet recognition that justice, however brutal, had been served. As Thrazakor's body was carried from the arena, General Krelzoth turned to Elena. His armor was splattered with blue-black blood. He looked tired, ancient and somehow at peace. You executed him without ever raising your blade, he said quietly. That is a form of warfare we do not practice. It is called observation, Elena replied, and patience, and understanding that every system has weak points, even strong systems, even honor-bound cultures. Especially honor-bound cultures, Krelzoth corrected. We are vulnerable to corruption precisely because we believe in honor so deeply. We want to trust our leaders. We want to believe in their strength. Thrazkor used that against us, Elena nodded. Around them, the cathedral was emptying. Warriors filed out in silence, processing what they had witnessed. The news would spread across the planet within hours. Within days, the entire empire would know that their king had been a poisoner and a murderer. What happens now? Elena asked. General Krelzoth looked at the empty throne, the chalice still lying where it had fallen, the arena stained with evidence of truth revealed. Now we remember who we were meant to be. Now we honor the memory of King Drasmor properly. Now we face the galaxy not as conquerors drunk on poison, but as warriors who value honor over power. He turned back to Elena, and something like respect showed in his ancient eyes. And now, Ambassador Vasquez, we negotiate. Not from a position of dominance or submission, but as equals. You have earned that much. Elena felt the weight of exhaustion settling on her shoulders. She had been in mortal danger for hours, had gambled everything on a theory pieced together from observation and cultural knowledge. But it had worked. Somehow impossibly it had worked. I would like that, she said simply. Negotiation is what I came here for. The binary suns had fully set now, leaving the sky the color of old blood. In the distance, bells began to ring, announcing the news to the city. The king was dead. The empire would change, and a human diplomat had caused it all without ever striking a blow. The negotiations took 3 days. Elena had expected weeks, perhaps months, but General Krelzoth moved with surprising speed. He claimed temporary leadership under the ancient provision that allowed the champion of a rightful challenge to serve as regent until proper succession could be determined. The Kravath Council, shaken by recent events, did not object. They met in a smaller chamber this time, not the War Cathedral. The room was circular, with windows that looked out over the crimson landscape of Krovathar. A simple table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs designed for Kravath anatomy. Elena sat in a hastily constructed human-sized chair that made her feel like a child at an adult's table. But General Krelzoth treated her as an equal. Your people wanted submission, he began, his voice tired but steady. Tribute, service, acknowledgement of Kravath's superiority. Those were Thrazkor's terms. They are no longer on the table. Elena nodded. What do you propose instead? Mutual non-aggression, trade agreements based on fair exchange, cultural exchange programs, and most importantly, time. Time for my people to heal, time to remember what we were before fear ruled us. It was more generous than Elena had dared hope. Why, you could still demand submission. Your empire is vast. Humanity is small in comparison. Krelzoth was quiet for a moment, his clawed hands resting on the table. Because you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that strength is not always physical. That honor can be maintained through truth rather than violence. That even the smallest voice can change the course of empires if it speaks wisely. He paused, then continued. And because King Drasmor would have wanted this. He believed the Kravath needed to evolve beyond simple conquest. He saw a galaxy where different species could coexist without constant war. Thrazkor murdered him to prevent that vision. I will not let that murder succeed twice by continuing Thrazkor's policies. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was not just about Earth anymore. This was about the future of an entire empire. Billions of Kravath who would be affected by the decisions made in this room. There is one condition, Krelzoth added. The galaxy must know what happened here. The truth of Thrazkor's corruption and fall. If we hide this, if we pretend he died naturally, then we learn nothing. The next ambitious poisoner will simply follow his example. That could weaken your empire in the eyes of other species, Elena pointed out, showing internal corruption, assassination, instability. Perhaps, Krelzoth agreed. Or perhaps it will show that the Kravath are strong enough to face their mistakes and learn from them. That we value truth over propaganda. That we are not the mindless conquerors other species fear. Elena extended her hand across the table, a human gesture of agreement. Krelzoth studied it for a moment, then carefully reached out with his own clawed hand and grasped hers. The size difference was absurd, his hand engulfing hers completely, but the meaning was clear. The treaty was signed the next day. News feeds across the galaxy carried the story, and Elena's name became known to billions of beings she would never meet. The human diplomat who had faced a Krovath king and won without fighting. The anthropologist who had turned culture into a weapon. On Earth there was celebration. Commander Peterson sent a message calling her a hero. The diplomatic corps offered her a promotion and her choice of assignments. Politicians wanted her to run for office. Everyone wanted to claim credit for her success. Elena ignored most of it. She spent her last day on Krovathar walking through the city with an escort of Krovath warriors, observing their daily life. She watched children play in the parks, merchants sell their goods, artists create sculptures in the public squares. She wanted to remember that behind every empire, every culture, every species, there were individuals just trying to live their lives. Before she left, Severak, the weapons keeper, asked to meet with her. They stood in the preparation chamber beneath the war cathedral, surrounded by instruments of combat that had not been needed. "You never used the mercy blade," Severak said. The weapon still rested on its rack, untouched since Elena had set it down in the arena. "I did not need to, but you took it into combat." Why? Elena considered the question. Because it represented what I hoped to achieve. A quick end, minimal suffering, honor preserved. I carried it as a reminder of what I was fighting for, even if I never drew it. Severak nodded slowly. Queen Talaresh would have approved. She believed the best warriors were those who won without unnecessary bloodshed. He lifted the blade from its rack and offered it to Elena. "Take this, a gift from the Krovath people to the human who reminded us of our better selves." Elena accepted the weapon with both hands. It was lighter than she expected, perfectly balanced. "I will treasure this, and I will remember what it represents." "See that you do," Severak said. "Gifts carry responsibility. This blade has drunk blood in the past in the service of honor. If you carry it, you carry that legacy." General Krell-Zoth escorted Elena to her ship personally. A formation of Krovath honor guards flanked them, not as threat but as respect. News drones captured the moment, broadcasting it to the watching galaxy. At the base of her ship's ramp, Krell-Zoth stopped. "Ambassador Vasquez, I have a question." "How did you know?" "How were you certain about the poison, the addiction, the murder? You took an enormous risk based on theory." Elena smiled. "I was not certain. Not completely. I observed patterns, made deductions, tested hypotheses. But there was always doubt. Always the possibility I was wrong. And yet you risked your life on that uncertainty." "Yes." "Why?" Elena looked up at the alien sky, at the two suns beginning their rise, painting the clouds in shades of orange and purple. "Because sometimes uncertainty is all we have. Sometimes we must act on partial information, on educated guesses, on faith that our observations are correct. That is what humans do, General. We are not the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but we observe, we adapt. We take risks based on understanding rather than just force." Krell-Zoth nodded slowly. "Then perhaps the galaxy is fortunate that humanity has joined it. We need species who think differently, who challenge our assumptions, who remind us that there are many kinds of strength." They exchanged formal farewells. Elena climbed the ramp to her ship, the mercy blade secured at her side. Sarah Chen, her pilot, was waiting with a smile. "Ready to go home, Ambassador?" "Yes," Elena said. "But first, calculate a course to the Yartek homeworld." Sarah's smile faded. "The Yartek? Those are the aliens King Drasmor was negotiating with when he died." "Why would we go there?" "Because those negotiations never finished. Because peace was interrupted by murder, and because someone should complete what Drasmor started." Sarah shook her head but began plotting the course. "You know, most diplomats would take a vacation after nearly getting killed by an alien king. Most diplomats did not just prove that humanity can hold its own through understanding and strategy," Elena replied. "The galaxy is watching now. They have seen what humans can do. We cannot waste that moment." The ship lifted off, leaving the red world behind. Elena watched through the viewport as Krovathar shrank to a point of light, then vanished as they entered faster than light travel. She thought about General Krell-Zoth's question. How had she known? The truth was more complex than she had admitted. She had not known. She had gambled. She had taken fragments of evidence, patterns of behavior, cultural knowledge, and biological theory, and constructed a story that might be true. Then she had bet her life that the story was real. It had worked this time. It might not work next time. But that was the nature of diplomacy, of anthropology, of being human in a galaxy full of stronger, older, more established species. Humanity's advantage was not strength or technology. It was the ability to understand, to adapt, to find the cracks in any system and apply pressure in exactly the right place. Her communicator chimed. A message from Earth's diplomatic corps. Already 3 more species had requested human ambassadors. Already the opportunities were multiplying. Earth's reputation had shifted overnight from weak newcomers to species to be respected. Elena thought about Thrazkor dying in the arena, about General Krelzoth choosing honor over fear, about Severak keeping weapons for 300 years, waiting for someone who would value mercy over violence, about all the small decisions and observations that had led to this moment. She had not set out to execute a king. She had set out to prevent a war. But sometimes those goals required the same actions. Sarah interrupted her thoughts. We will reach Yartek space in 6 days. What's your plan? Elena smiled. The same as always: observe, listen, learn, find the story beneath the story, and hope that understanding is enough. And if it is not enough? Elena touched the mercy blade at her side. Then I adapt. That is what humans do. The ship traveled through the darkness between stars, carrying a human diplomat to the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next chance to prove that humanity belonged among the ancient species of the galaxy, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple revolutionary act of understanding. Thank you for watching, and comment for next part.